Hello. So, this video is going to be about Jungle Book, and that came out in 1967. A few things up front about the movie. It was the dog is here for the moment. We'll see how long that lasts. Um, it's the dog. If you've seen the videos enough, you know sometimes he's here, sometimes he leaves, sometimes he stays for the entire thing. Depends on what he feels like doing. So, Jungle Book came out in 1967, was the last movie that Walt Disney was majorly involved in because unfortunately he died about a year before the movie was finished and released. I will get to that, but that won't be until after I get to the main body of the movie. It was based on the book, of course, by Rudyard Kipling, The Jungle Book, which came out in 1984. Sorry, 1894. 1894. Big difference there. The movie came out before the book, but the movie's based on the book. Never mind. No. 1894 is Rudyard Kipling, and he wrote that. He wrote quite a few other books as well. The Jungle Book books themselves is just a series of adventures that Mowgli has with different animals in the jungle, and with the humans in the man village. So, the Jungle Book, this version of the Jungle Book takes a little bit more of a loose interpretation of it. This video, I will of course be going over the original one from 1967, the sequel, which I don't care that much for. It's been a long time since I've seen it, so I'm just going to basically sum it up when I get to that point. Appearances in House of Mouse. I am going to talk about Tailspin. If you know what Tailspin is, then you'll have an idea of what that's going to involve. And if you don't know what Tailspin is, then maybe it'll be something you'll be interested in finding on Disney Plus. And then I will be talking about the 2000, I think it was 16 live action one, and there was also two other live action versions of Jungle Book that Disney had made. One in both of them were in the 1990s. So I'll be going over those as well. The beginning of the story is, of course, Bagheera finds a baby. Bagheera is I always have to remember, is it a panther or a jaguar? It's a panther. Bagheera is a panther. I don't know why I always have to remind myself of that. I just do. Bagheera is a panther, finds a baby in a shipwrecked boat. And that's just basically where the jumping off point of the story is. Finds the baby. He should have, in all honesty, to protect the jungle, kind of left the baby alone. But, I guess, second best instincts, takes the baby, takes it to a bunch of wolves, and they take the baby in as their own, and they raise the baby, Mowgli, as the animals name him, the wolves raise the baby, and, a bunch of the other animals tend to help out with the baby, I'm assuming, because Bagheera comes back every now and then, because Mowgli knows Bagheera later on. They did change some of the characters around a little bit from what's in the book and what's in other, so many other interpretations of the Jungle Book, because there's lots of different variations of how can we interpret the Jungle Book? This is just one of the more famous ones. And so, 10 years passed. Mowgli grows up. He's about 10 years old now. And, Shere Khan, this tiger, which introduce our cast of guests today. We have a little wolf because, Mowgli's raised by wolves. We have an elephant because there's the elephants in the movie. We have my tiger representing Shere Khan. And this is technically a stuffed rattlesnake. It's fake. It's a, Beanie Baby type rattlesnake. But I don't have any, pythons or boas or anything like that for Kaa. So we get the rattlesnake. And, of course, we have my Jungle book from Disney. Don't have a, Sword in the Stone book from Disney for the Sword in the Stone video. So I had to improvise for the other Arthur books that I had. My dog is enjoying chewing on his own foot right now. Rainy, stop. As you can see, he doesn't listen to anything. The shirt, I got this thing from somewhere. I don't remember where. It's just a very flowery tree. Is about the closest thing I have that works to be part of a Jungle Book movie, because I don't have any that have a giant, forest or a woodlands or whatever, or a jungle, or don't have anything that has, you know, a tiger on it, or a panther, or a bear. Well, I have the wolf shirt, but that worked better for the 101 Dalmatians video. Yeah. So, 10 years passed, and Shere Khan returns to the jungle, and he, says that he will kill the man cub for stepping foot in his jungle because, he sees it as his jungle, and he's kind of the outlier of the way the animals tend to work. Most of the other animals seem to get along rather well. The wolves and Bagheera seem to get along rather well. Even Bagheera and the elephant, as we see later on, seem to get along well enough. But Shere Khan is kind of the outlier in this because he very much doesn't like the idea of there being, man in his forest, and he doesn't like people going against his rule. Which leads us to, the wolves having to have like this council, I guess would be a good way of putting it. And they decided, okay, so for the good of the pack, we have to send Mowgli away. He has to go back to the man village. And, they tell the boy's father, that Mowgli was raised by, these two wolves, and, kind of basically is like their cub. And different iterations of the movie have, kind of highlighted that in different ways. Sometimes Mowgli grows up to want to, as he grows up, he's training to try to become a wolf, or, however the case may be. And, and then when we get to, Bagheera says, well, I can take Mowgli to the man village. He trusts me. We'll go into the jungle and I'll take him to the man village. So then we cut to, Bagheera and Mowgli making their way through the jungle at night. And, Mowgli doesn't know that Bagheera is taking him to the man village. And, Mowgli, the crux of the story is, Mowgli doesn't want to go to the man village because he likes living in the jungle. And Bagheera and the other animals, mostly the other wolves, want to get Mowgli to this man village because then he'll at least be safe because he's outside, for the most part, of Shere Khan's reach. And throughout the, so that's part of that. And they get to this tree, they spend the night in the tree. It's just funny watching Mowgli kind of like climb the tree. That's just funny. And what ends up happening is, of course, then they interact with Kaa, the snake, who, for some reason has the ability to hypnotize people. I never understood exactly where that came from. I'm assuming it has to be the concept of, maybe something to do with like the snake charmer, where like the snake charmer can, hypnotize the snake, even though it's just more the snake's following the movement of the flute, since it can't really, do anything else. Don't try snake charming. It's probably not the safest thing in the world. But, so, Kaa tries to hypnotize Mowgli and tries to eat him, and Bagheera wakes up and stops that, and then Kaa tries to hypnotize Bagheera and kind of succeeds, and then Mowgli just kind of like shoves, Kaa's coils out of the tree, and that just calls like, the whole, Kaa on the ground and like a pile of coils all crinkled up. And then he, goes off, and he's got like a knot in the back of his tail, and he's like all crinked and, all that and everything. And, Mowgli and Bagheera argue a little bit more, but Mowgli doesn't want to go back to the man village, and then, they fall asleep, and then the next morning is when the elephants arrive. And they are led by, I believe it's Colonel Hathi is what his name is. He's just this concept, he's like the general of this, brigade of elephants, and he apparently at some point had part of like the Maharaja's corps or something like that. I don't know. I don't remember. Yeah, it differs a little bit, different interpretations of the elephants in the jungle in different capacities, and you'll see that if you have watched the original Jungle Book, and then if you watch later on the Jungle Book, admittedly the live action one from like 2016, 17 range, whatever, probably is a bit closer to how actual animals would interact with each other, but probably not by much because it's still, Disney taking liberties, which is okay in these cases since it's kind of a fairy tale concept. And what ends up happening is, Mowgli sees the elephants, and Bagheera is just like, oh god, it's the elephants. Why so early? And Mowgli ends up meeting this little elephant, who I don't remember what the little elephant's name is. Meets this, this little elephant. She's so cute. and they can become friends, really fast friends. And of course, we have the whole Colonel Hottie inspecting the troops, and like his wife's there, and her name's Winifred, I think. And we have him inspecting all the troops, criticizing all the different elephants, and it's like kind of the way that like a commander would talk to like his lieutenants in rank or whatever, his soldiers in rank, and like keep that keep your muzzle nice and clean, and keep your your tusks, your bayonets or whatever nice and sharp and clean and everything. And that hairstyle is out of order, and every just like going through and like criticizing everything. Finding something to criticize about each one of them. I love the joke that the elephants do. It's like Winifred is just like, march, march, march. And the one that's next to her is like, I'm putting in for a transfer to a new herd. I'm like, is that how this works? Because my understanding of elephants is that it's usually the females that lead the herd, and then the males, once they reach a certain age, are like set off on their own because of, when mating season comes around, and the bulls are a lot, a lot more angry and dangerous, and the females are more the ones that are in charge. The elephants are more of a matriarchal society. Admittedly, I am a bit more familiar with the dynamics of African elephants as opposed to Asian elephants. So the Asian elephants might have a slightly different hierarchy in their, elephant packs and herds and such. And if that's the case, then okay, sure, go ahead. And what ends up happening is, Hathi gets down, like inspects the sun, and then he tries to inspect Mowgli, and he realizes he's a human. And it's, we gotta get why is there a human in my forest? Why is there a man cub in my forest? It's like they refer to him as Mowgli as like a man cub, which, makes sense. And Bagheera's like, no, Hathi, it's fine. I'm taking him to the man village. I'm gonna get him out of here. And, so we get the funny bits of, the elephants doing more marching, and like, steamrolling into each other at some point, which is just funny. And then, Bagheera takes Mowgli off, and then we get, them arguing a bit more. And, Mowgli's like, no, but I can survive in the forest, in the jungle. I'll be fine. I don't want to go to the man village. I want to go back home to, the wolves that are my family and everything. The only life I've ever known type thing. Which I can see where Mowgli's coming from that. It is the only life he's ever known was being with the wolves and being in the jungle. But, there's a there's a giant, vicious tiger that wants to kill you. So I'd go to the man village. But, I also probably, well, I don't know. If I'd been raised by wolves, I probably would have been a bit of a different person. I don't know. My dog acts like he was raised by cats. So yeah, you act like you were raised by cats. He's just ignoring me, which is usually his default setting of, oh, I don't want you. Oh, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'll let you know when I want to be petted or let out or walked or whatever the case may be. And Bagheera and Mowgli argue and everything, and then Mowgli kind of goes off on his own, and then we're introduced to Baloo. It's just funny. Baloo, and we get him and Mowgli interacting and having fun, and they start doing the little boxing and everything, and then we get the bare necessities song and everything, which is just fun. And admittedly, for how not quite accurate to the story of the movie is, I still like the story. I still like the story that they do for the movie, and I still like the songs in the movie. So what ends up happening is, Baloo and Mowgli end up interacting and having fun, and, Bagheera comes back and he sees this and he explains to Baloo, no, I'm trying to take him back to the man village. And Baloo's like, not the man village, they'll ruin him. They'll make a man out of him. Mowgli's argument for why he can stay in the forest is, or Bagheera keeps saying, well, Shere Khan doesn't like man because of their fire and their guns and everything. And Mowgli's like, but I don't have any of those things. True. But, Shere Khan, it's not really going to be the type to wait around until you do, because then you're more of a threat to him. And, we get, Baloo and Mowgli singing, and Baloo's kind of like, okay, well, I'll take care of the kid. Bagheera's just like, okay. And, like, Bagheera goes off, he's like, okay, well, let's see how long this takes for you to realize that this was probably not your best idea in the world, Baloo. And I don't remember exactly what kind of bear Blue is supposed to be. He's just, this fun-loving type bear. I don't remember what species exactly he's supposed to be. There's, a few different versions of what type of a bear Baloo is supposed to be, depending on, what version you watch of, you know, Jungle Book or Mowgli or whatever you want to refer to it as. I know there's another one on Netflix right now that's called like Mowgli Legend of the Jungle. I've watched that. It was okay. Um, but then we get, them singing and everything. And then we get the monkeys showing up. And they take Mowgli and they take him off to go see King Louie. And we get, the whole fun bit of, I want to be, I want to be like you, that whole big fun bit with the animals, with all the monkeys and the orangutan and everything singing and dancing, and Mowgli singing and dancing with them. And, Bagheera and Baloo show up, and Baloo shows up dressed like this. And I'm just like, okay, how is Louis so desperate for, attention that he's willing to date something that is clearly not an orangutan? I find that so funny. And like, they, dancing and everything in the back and the forth, that, I love how they do that. And then what ends up happening is, Baloo and Bagheera, Baloo's disguise is revealed, and then, him and Bagheera end up, grabbing Mowgli and trying to run, and then, the whole temple that Louie and all the monkeys and everything living gets, like, destroyed, because it's, like, this ancient temple that is somehow still okay, but, it's kind of like, it's not Sri Lanka, there's, like, another ancient temple city somewhere in, like, India that looks a lot like the temple that they have here. There's a lot of temples in India that kind of look a lot like the types of temples that they use for the backdrop for the King Louis sequence. I just don't remember exactly what those cities are called. I'll put a picture here because this is like what the different buildings and everything kind of look like in the scene, and this is probably what they're based on. Because these were ruins and everything that have of course been discovered or been well known at that time when Rudyard Kipling was writing the books, and then of course Disney probably using it was like, well, we've got pictures of these different places. I don't think they actually went to India and like scattered out these different places and everything, but they still oh, okay, well, let's see what we got here, and then they use that for some of the bases of it. So we do that, and like Mowgli and Baloo and Bagheera end up escaping, of course, and Baloo has a black eye and Bagheera has a black eye. They have like opposites. And, they get Mowgli out of there and they get him, I love, just like these little tender moments that they do between like Baloo and Mowgli where it's like, Mowgli's like sleeping on like this like basket plant type thing. So like Baloo kind of wraps the leaves around him so he's not cold. And then like Baloo and Bagheera end up they kind of spend the whole night arguing. Well, it's not the whole night. It's like part of the night arguing over this. Like, well, you have to take him back to the ambulance, but I don't want to. But I want to keep him safe. But blah blah blah. Going back and forth. And then Bagheera just kind of says, the problem is Shere Khan. Shere Khan is back in the forest, back in the jungle, and if he finds Mowgli, he will kill him. And if you want the boy safe, then he has to go to the man village because that is the safest place for Mowgli to be. And we get the beautiful transition in the background of it slowly becomes dawn in the video, in the movie when you're watching it. It's like them arguing and everything, and it slowly it starts out as night and then it slowly becomes dawn over the course of the argument. And we see these realization on Baloo where it's just like, I have to take him back, don't I? Because it'll keep him safe. And Baloo, agrees that he'll take Mowgli back to the man village because it would be where Mowgli would be the safest. And, so then, they Baloo wakes up Mowgli, and he, and then we get this beautiful scene of very well animated and acted in regards to the way that, the Phil Harris who voiced Baloo has to do. And then, it was one of, Woolie Reitherman, who was the director of the movie, one of his sons voiced Mowgli. He also voiced like Christopher Robin and different things, and like some of his sons voiced Arthur in Sword in the Stone. A lot of the Disney people, depending on stuff, would sometimes, if they need like kid voices, they would bring their own kids in to like audition for the movie and be in the movie. which I don't think is a problem. I mean, at that point in time, there weren't that many, big child actor stars. So it made sense of, well, we've got, I've got my own kids and everything. So let's at least bring them in and see if they can, do the lines the right way. And if they can, then we're good. And if they can't, then we'll, move on and, try someone else outside of the studio or whatever. Because, like, sometimes, like, even the different animators would sometimes pop in and do, like, a side voice somewhere, which is fine. I never blame them for that. That made sense. I mean, like, Walt Disney originally voiced Mickey and Minnie way back in the beginning. So, that just makes sense. It's like, well, if we have the voices in house, we might as well use them. It's just fun. And what ends up happening is, Baloo takes Mowgli, and, we get this, as I said, we get this beautiful scene of Baloo trying and trying and trying to try to explain to Mowgli that no, I have to take you back to the man village. I'm sorry, but I have to because it's for your own safety. And what ends up happening, and we get this bit where, we watch Baloo and, Mowgli's, singing kind of the bare necessities bit and everything, like trying to be the happy-go-lucky and everything. And Baloo is trying, he's clearly, he loves Mowgli at this point in time. And I was like, you've known him for like a day, but sure. We'll go with that concept. It's like instinct kicking in that you're supposed to care for the small child thing, cub, whatever. And we get a whole lot of that. And then we get, Baloo finally saying, I have, grabbing Mowgli's hands and going, you don't understand. I have to take you back to the man village for your own protection. And that's when Mowgli kind of realizes that I can't trust anybody. I can't trust anybody at all. And he runs off, and Baloo tries to follow him, but that doesn't work. And, Mowgli runs off. Bagheera shows up, and then Bagheera and Baloo start going, okay, well, we got to go and try to find Mowgli and everything. Bagheera goes one way, Baloo goes the other way, and then we get, Bagheera interacting with General Hathi, Colonel Hathi again in the elephants, and explaining to them, no. Mowgli ran away. We got to find him before Shere Khan can find him. And, of course, at this point in time, we've been introduced to Shere Khan, who is, a big tiger. I'm pretty sure he's supposed to be I don't know. I think he's probably just like an Indonesian tiger, but he's a tiger. Hence my giant tiger right here. He'll make a return later when I do the Aladdin videos for Raja. So we get, we're introduced to Shere Khan. Side note, when we first see Shere Khan, he's stalking this deer. The deer looks surprisingly like Bambi's mother. It looks rather similar to Bambi's mother. They probably just, it's like, we need a deer for him to stalk. We already killed Bambi's mother once. Go find me go find me some of that animation of her, and we'll use that. Okay, they do that. And what ends up happening is, Shere Khan, went after the mother, or went after the deer, and then the deer got scared off, so he didn't get the deer. And then he hears Bagheera and Hathi talking, and Hathi's wife, Winifred, and his son kind of guilt him into, okay, well, you're gonna have to help look for the kid, and have to look for the man cub. So all the elephants go off to try to look for the man cub, and Shere Khan's like, I know where they're going. If I avoid them, I might be able to find this man cub on my own and have a little fun with him. I love how they draw Shere Khan, and how they animate him and everything. And then we get, of course, the whole sequence with Kaa again, the whole trust in me, bit where he finds Mowgli, and then he tricks him into, looking into his eyes and everything, or Mowgli can't kind of resist anymore. And, he sings and everything, and Mowgli is, all wrapped up in his coils and everything. And, yeah, because that goes well. And then I love this bit because, like, part of Kaa's tail is, like, hanging down from the tree. And, he's just about ready to try to eat Mowgli. And then we get, like, Shere Khan comes in and, like, pulls on his tail like it's a doorbell. And we even get, like, the dong dong sound. And I'm just like, sure. When you're a kid, you're like, the snake has a doorbell. And so Shere Khan just like sitting there like, okay, well, there's a snake. he's just like sitting, laying there and waiting for Ka to come down. Like Ka comes down, he's like, "Oh, um, hello, Mr. Shere Khan, sir. Giant tiger that can, very easily kill me if he so wished." Ugh. And then we get this great interaction between Ka and Shere Khan. Like Shere Khan just like has like Ka's, he just like uses his claws right on. Get back up there. Just like I just love how they animated Shere Khan's claws. It's just like the Have you seen this man cub that I've been hearing so much about? Man cub? No, I haven't seen any man cub. I don't know what you're talking about. Who are you? What are you doing here? Doesn't quite go that except it was like the whole no, I have no idea who this man cub is. It's like, well, if you see him, you'll let me know. Of course, sir. Of course, I'll let you know if I see the man cub. You'll be the first to know. And and I love this bit where it's just like Khan's just like, well, I've known your man cub is, search me, and Shere Khan's like, okay, and so Ka lowers his tail. He's like, nothing on this end, nothing in here. He's like, and Ka's like, and Shere Khan's like, what about the middle? The middle? Yeah, the middle. Okay, so he like lowers a bunch of his coils down, and Shere Khan's just like, like feeling around, nothing. And at this point in time, kind of Mowgli, the shifting of the coils probably woke Mowgli up out of the being hypnotized and everything, and so we get Shere Khan goes off, and Ka doesn't seem to be the biggest fan of Shere Khan. He's terrified of him, and I would be too. Quite right. I would be rather terrified as well if Shere Khan had been anywhere near me. I'm cautious of animals when I go to the zoo and they're on like another side of like bulletproof glass. I live in Nebraska. Several years ago at our Omaha Zoo, there was a gorilla that like attacked the glass enclosure where at our zoo, at the big zoo that we have here in Omaha, and he like attacked the glass for whatever reason. I don't remember why, but he attacked it and it like cracked the glass. And I'm just like, I've slept in that building. They have a thing at the zoo, at the Henry Dorley Zoo nothing against the Henry Dorley Zoo. I love the zoo. They do a great job with all the animals. At the zoo, they have this thing where you can like spend the night in like different enclosures. Like we have an aquarium where you can spend the night in the aquarium. You can, I don't remember if you can spend the night in the jungle itself, but you can at least get like a night tour of the jungle. You can spend the night. I don't remember if you can spend the night in the desert dome, but you can like night tours there, and then you can do you can spend the night in like this. We have like a gorilla house and an orangutan house, and like we spent the night in the gorilla house. And admittedly, the gorillas are not out at night. The gorillas are like down in their subterranean sleeping quarters wherever they keep them at night. So it's not like we were up there at the same time, but it's just like, okay, yeah. Weird trivia that has really nothing to do with the Jungle Book, I guess, but my niece was born on the same day as one of the baby, I think it was one of the baby gorillas that they had at the zoo. And it was same day, same year, and we just like every time that we go to the zoo, she's with us, it's like that's your twin. I would very much like to find a way of like getting her and the gorilla in like the same picture together. That would be nice. But the zoo is, well, it's winter right now, so the zoo isn't really open. But because of COVID and everything, it's kind of a not too interested in trying to go to a zoo where there's a ton of people and then in some enclosed spaces and everything. We try to go to the zoo at least once a year, and that unfortunately hasn't happened. We have like tigers at the zoo, and I love going to the zoo. I love animals, Moving on, sorry, back to Jungle Book. Sorry, off topic. I don't know how many sub tangents that was. Zoo, gorilla, house, niece, animals, whatever. I don't know how many sub tangents. I don't know. But like what ends up happening is Shere Khan or Mowgli shoves Kaa's coils out of the tree again after Shere Khan's walked off, thankfully. And then, Kaa gets all twisted and coiled and kinked up again, and he goes off, and Mowgli's like, wandering off again. And then we get the buzzards, the vultures. Okay, so trivia on the vultures. They had originally been designed to be based on the Beatles because there were four vultures and they were going to have them sing like the Beatles, and they had even kind of written a Beatles-esque type song for the vultures to sing, and they were going to have the Beatles come in and voice the vultures. But like a couple of weeks or something like that before they were set to do the recording of the vultures, of the Beatles coming in and either like having them record in London and then bringing it over, or having them fly over to California or whatever, and do the voices there and everything, because this was at like the height of like Beatlemania or whatever. And Walt Disney decided, if we put the Beatles in the movie, it's kind of gonna date the movie a little bit. I'm like, I mean, admittedly, at that time, you weren't exactly going to be sure about like the staying power of the Beatles, so I can kind of understand that. They kind of tried to do this later on in Hercules again, because in Hercules, there's the five muses that sing, that kind of are the narrators of the story, and or the narrator slash kind of they kind of help transition the story, and the five muses were originally going to be voiced by the Spice Girls, but that didn't happen. I'll go over that again when later down the line when we get to Hercules, but not yet. And what ends up happening is, so Walt decided, well, no, let's not have the Beatles. And so they rearranged the song. It's like more of a barbershop quartet, which I'm like, I think the barbershop quartet mode is gonna be a bit more dated than the Beatles mode, but okay, whatever. I still like the song, but like we get the whole the vultures interacting with each other, and they all have like different accents for like Liverpool and like other places all over. And what ends up happening is the vultures are like arguing over, well, what do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? No, don't start that again. It's like just arguing over like, well, what are we gonna do? Like, it's like they all just like headbutting each other or whatever. And then Mowgli shows up, and they look at Mowgli and they're just like, what is that? What's that walking bag of bones? So they go over and they look over the kid and like everything, and then they, Mowgli's like, oh, I don't have any friends. Just leave me alone. I don't trust anybody. And then the vulture starts, going to their song. Oh, I don't remember what the song is called. That's bad. That's bad. What was the song called? I don't remember. But I don't remember what the song was called. But it was just like this fun bit of like the vultures singing, and Mowgli then joins in and everything because they're trying to cheer him up and everything. It's kind of like the song ended up being like described as like if either a barbershop quartet was trying to do the Beatles, or if the Beatles attempted to do a barbershop quartet type song. So it's like, okay, yeah. And the song was written by the same people the song was written for that one by the same people that did, by the same brothers that wrote the songs for like Mary Poppins, and I think it was Bed Knobs and Broomsticks and stuff like that. So they were in a lot of different things. And there's like some gaps at times in like some of the Disney animated stuff. Like I think there's a little bit of a gap between like this and 101 Dalmatians, and I don't remember how much of a gap there was between like 101 Dalmatians and Sword in the Stone. There's a gap between like this and Sword in the Stone, and I think between like 101 Dalmatians and Sword in the Stone. Not like a huge gap, but Disney was a little bit more focused on doing live action movies at that point in time and building the Disney parks and doing like the Disney TV show on ABC or whatever it was called. It was ABC, I think, at the time. The Disney's Wonderful World of Color type thing. And what ends up happening is we get the vultures cheer up Mowgli, and then Shere Khan shows up. And he starts, chasing Mowgli around and everything. And the vultures kind of flee, and I don't blame the vultures for being scared of Shere Khan. I don't in the slightest. And we get, the Baloo shows up, and he's trying to, he's, holding on to Shere Khan by the tail. You got the tiger by the tail, and which is not a safe place to be. I love it was like at one point where he's like getting dragged around by the tiger and like everything. Like he's just trying to like hold the tiger back from Mowgli so Mowgli can get away. And the vultures help try to get Mowgli out of there. And like, okay, so the points to the vultures. They tried to help. They did try to help. They grabbed Mowgli and try to like lift him up to fly him away. And and like one of the vultures tells Baloo after Mowgli's lifted up in the air, it's like, well, he looks at him, he's like, are you insane? There's teeth in the other end. As he's like, fighting against Shere Khan's tail, and then there's like this lightning that happens, and it hits this very dry tree, and the tree sparks, and there's fire off the tree and everything, and like Shere Khan's kind of Shere Khan and Baloo are actually like fighting at this time, and Baloo's trying to do his best to fight, and like Bagheera is probably like racing there at the same time, and we get Mowgli and one of the vultures tells Mowgli, it's like that's fire. Grab that, put that on Shere Khan because that's the one thing that he's afraid of. So Mowgli grabs this like branch that's on fire and takes it over to Shere Khan, like ties his tail up in it, or ties it up in his tail, which I'm just like, okay. And and then Shere Khan sees the fire and then he freaks out and he like runs off, and and Baloo took a couple of good hits from Shere Khan, and Baloo's kind of like out and looks like he's kind of dead. So we have, the vultures, and, Bagheera showed up at this point in time, and Mowgli and everything, over Baloo, and, Bagheera starts giving this beautiful speech about how brave Baloo was, and how this will now be, hallowed ground in the jungle, and like, there's all this great speech and everything, and then like Mowgli and Bagheera like walking away, and Baloo goes, well, don't stop. You were just getting to the good part. Because he like woke up. And it's just like, oh God. And, they're all happy that Baloo's alive and safe and everything. And, and they got away from the area. And then they must have ended up very close to the man village, or the river pond thing, whatever, that's near the man village, because then they're just like, the three of them are all very happy and everything. Kind of admittedly now, since Shere Khan's gone, Mowgli could technically stay in the forest. Stay in the jungle. And I don't know why I keep saying forest. There's woods, there's forest, there's jungle. This is a jungle. And we get, we start hearing this little singing. And, they look over, and it's more Mowgli that's affected by it, and he looks over and he sees this cute little girl. She's not given a name in the original. I believe in the sequel her name is Shanti. I think so. And she's got this pitcher of water and everything, and she's going down to the river to fetch water, and she's singing about when I grow up and everything, when I am grown, I'll have a husband and a house, and I'll cook, and my daughter will go and fetch the water and everything. And she's just singing away at that and everything, and she gets the water, and like Mowgli and Baloo and Bagheera kind of like are up by it, and they're just like watching it everything, and Mowgli kind of like climbs this tree to get a better look at her, so he's like hanging over the river or pond or whatever, and she gets the water, and she starts going back to the village, and then she must have seen Mowgli at some point because they make eye contact, and it's just subtle, and she sees Mowgli, and then she like accidentally drops the pot of water, and it rolls down to where Mowgli is, and he's like standing by where she had been sitting when she was singing, and Baloo makes a comment in the off to the side, like, she did that on purpose. And Bagheera's like, yes, she did. And we get and Mowgli is just utterly smitten at this point in time, and he like takes the water and like scoops more into it, and then he shows it to her, and she's just like subtly like just blinks and like kind of smiles at him and turns and walks toward the village. And Mowgli just like takes the pitcher of water and puts it on his head and like follows her, and Baloo is just like, come back. And Mowgli just like turns and goes and like follows her into the village. And Baloo is just like, but why did you leave? Type thing. And Bagheera is just like, well, and Mowgli stays in the man village, and went in the man village of his own free will. And Baloo and Bagheera kind of just, dance off into the jungle. They decide to head home in the jungle, and they start, singing and everything. And I think it was, they start singing the bare necessities and everything. And, they're happy and everything. And so that's basically where the movie ends. Um, when they were in the development of the movie, they had been trying to figure out, okay, well, how can we get Mowgli into the Man Village? And like they went back to, like, I think it was Rudyard Kipling's Rudyard Kipling original version of the Jungle Book, along with one of the other variations of the movie that someone at the theater at the studio had been working on for a while. Because they had an original version of it that was written by a man named Bill Peet, and he had left Disney at one point because of differences between him and Disney, and between him and Walt. And what ended up happening was, they had kept a lot of the information that he had, and they kind of went back at times to like review of what he had, but Walt wanted it to be a little bit more happy-go-lucky as of a movie. I mean, like there are still moments in it where it's, like the fight with Shere Khan is kind of, dangerous and everything, but for the most part, it's rather happy-go-lucky. And we get there was like, well, we need a way for him to go into the village. We want to stay in the village. And like they look over it, and it's like later on, it's like Mowgli grew up and got married and everything. So it's just like, we'll just put this cute little girl in the movie, and she'll be the one that can like lure slash trick him into the village. Oh God. And and what ends up happening is, so that's what happened with that. And as I said, we get into the cast list a little bit. So it was Bruce Reitherman voices Mowgli. And then we get, of course, Phil Harris was Baloo. Sebastian Cabot was Bagheera. Louis Prima, who is like a musician of the time, plays King Louis. And Louis' motivation for wanting to have Mowgli was, of course, he can learn about man's red flower, which is how to make fire. Which, he thought, well, if I can make fire, then I'll be better than, then I can, even be more human. And of course, we had George Saunders as Bagheera, Sterling Holloway as Kaa. And if you paid attention to some of the other movies that I've talked about, Sterling Holloway as Kaa was also Winnie the Pooh, and was Winnie the Pooh for a long time, and he was the Cheshire Cat in Alice in Wonderland. I don't remember if he was in, off the top of my head, I do not remember him being in Peter Pan. The only one that I can think of for who he would have been in Peter Pan is like Smee, but I don't remember if that was true or not. And J. Pat O'Malley was Colonel Hothby. Verna Felton was Winifred. It was her, the film was released after her death, so it was posthumously released. Junior is the name of the baby elephant of Hothby and Winifred's son. Not really too much else beyond that. There's, his parents and everything, and not too much with that. The vultures and everything are just, different people that could do the different accents that they wanted. Walt had wanted to do kind of the Jungle Book idea for a while. And they'd started, he had, the book had caught Rudyard Kipling's book had caught his attention way back in the 1930s. And it took a while for him to either get the rights to it or develop the right kind of story that he wanted to do. And Walt had kind of been just a little bit disheartened because Sword in the Stone hadn't done as well as they had thought it would. And, I made the comment in the Sword in the Stone video, if it's not my favorite out of the Disney animated movies, there are like 2 Disney movies that I will refuse to watch, and they will not be on this list at all. There are 2 movies that came out in like the 2000s, when, in my opinion at least, Disney was having a bit of a lull in their, creativity. They did like Chicken Little and Home on the Range, and neither of those, you ain't gonna see pictures of them on here because I don't like them. And they're my least favorite. I don't even want to watch them. I've watched them. I've never even watched Chicken Little because it looks so bad. And I've watched Home on the Range like once, and I was not impressed by any means. And that was like when I was like 10, 12, whatever, how old I was at the time. I'm just like, nope. That's a no. But I do, I mean, like, I will watch, like, but then the other one that's like on the bottom of my list for like Disney is like, the Adventures of Ichabod Crane and Mr. Toad, where it's, the Sleepy Hollow and the Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. Those ones, I'll watch them, but it's not one that I like aim to, oh yeah, I really, really want to watch that. It's like, no, 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 no. I'll at least watch Sword in the Stone. I at least find parts of it funny. So, um, Jungle Book, I once you get past a certain part, it was like I don't know where I'd rank the movies. I mean, like Jungle Book would be further down the list, and there would be other ones that would be further up on the list. But I don't know. That'd be a little bit more of a harder thing to do. Ranking Disney villains might be a little bit easier for me to do, or even the Disney princesses or the heroines at times might be a little bit easier for me to do at some point, which I plan on doing at some point. But that'll be a ways down the line once I've gotten through all of the movies. Once I've watched, once we've done all the reviews, then I'll do that and like rank couples and everything. But Walt hadn't been that impressed with what had happened with Sword in the Stone. It hadn't gone very well. 101 Dalmatians, admittedly, he admitted later on that he did like what happened with 101 Dalmatians, but Sword in the Stone wasn't all that big of a deal for what he enjoyed about it. And then Jungle Book, he died about a year or so before it was released. And, he some rifts that had happened at Disney had been healed before he passed, but unfortunately not all of them. But so different things were fixed and were not fixed in regards to Walt's relationship with some of the other animators in the movie and the series. Although the one that kind of took over as the head of the Disney animation after Walt passed was Worley Reitherman, who was the one that directed Jungle Book, and his son played Mowgli, and he did a lot of other animation on a lot of other movies. He was one of the Disney's 9 old men, which at some point I may just end up having to do like a video about them, but that'll be again later on. And then we get into I mean there wasn't too much, there had been a few other songs that had been written for the original draft of it that was written by Bill Peet. The only one that ended up sticking around was the Bare Necessities song. All the others ended up being rewritten or replaced by something else by the Sherman Brothers, who had done who had done the music for Mary Poppins and Bedknobs and Broomsticks and a lot of that. The song for Caw, Trust in Me, that Caw sings is actually a variation of a song called like The Land of Sand or whatever that they had written for like Mary Poppins, and that they didn't use it in the movie, so they're just like they kind of they kept the melody, but they changed the lyrics and did the Trust in Me, and I think that worked rather well. Not too much with that. Yeah, Jungle Book Walt died in December 15th, 1966 was when Walt Disney died. And then, Jungle Book came out like a year later, or came out the next year once it was all finished and everything. It was the last one that had personal touches by Disney. Critical reception, they did like it. But then we get into the whole, the later on we get into the more the criticism of it. And the quote by Walt Disney's own grandniece, Abigail Disney. There's not that many other movies from Disney necessarily that have a ton of this criticism in it. There's a few bits. There's a bit with the Fantasia, but I didn't go into that with the video. And there's of course the Peter Pan with the what makes the red man red with Peter Pan, and I didn't really touch on that much. The quote that I have here for Disney from Abigail Disney is. Let's put it this way. I really hope that this does not get this video banned or demonetized, but we'll see what happens because I'm still learning YouTube rules. Is her just like, kind of criticizing the movie and pointing out, yeah, it had that in it, yeah, it had that in it, yeah, it had that in it, and you can go look up the quote. It's on the Wikipedia page for the Disney Wikipedia page for the movie, and it's like, no. Trivia for Disney, for other trivia for this. Jungle Book does not appear in Kingdom Hearts. That would have been a fun world to run around in, but you don't run around at all in like the jungle for Jungle Book. What it is there had been in Kingdom Hearts, they had created there's code in Birth by Sleep, so like the the Aqua Ventus and Terra area, where there had been a world created that was based on Jungle Book, but and like through like different hacks and cheat codes and everything you can get into it, but for there wasn't if it was in the code of what I played, I never ended up. I don't know how to do that, so I didn't end up having to play through that. But I think that would have been a fun area. You're around with like Mowgli and Blue and Bagheera, and probably have to fight like Shere Khan at some point, maybe Louis or ever, whatever. But not too much with that. I mean, it's not really like a huge magic based world, so I guess you could have had like maybe like Mowgli or Baloo or Bagheera or something like that. Be like maybe like have Bagheera be like a summon or something like that. That would have been kind of fun, but they didn't do that. Um, you know, did there have been a few live action versions of Jungle Book, and we'll get to those in a minute. But first, I'm going to go over the Jungle Book 2 that came out in 2003. Um, Not one of my favorite Disney sequels. I've seen it a couple of times. It's Mowgli gets bored in the man village, so he likes to try to wander off into the jungle again. And he has adoptive parents and a new little brother. And Shanti is in the village, and she, her and Mowgli, are friends and everything. And Mowgli seems to be as rather welcomed into the village, except he likes to keep trying to like go back into the jungle to go and see his friends and everything. And that doesn't go over well for the villagers. And at one point, he almost leads a bunch of the kids into the jungle, but the villagers stop him and everything. And Mowgli ends up running away, and Shanti and I think it was Ranja or whatever, Ranjan, whatever his name was, his younger brother. I don't know if it's his younger brother or her younger brother, but one of the two. Follow him into the jungle to try to save him and everything. And he finds Baloo and Bagheera and the wolves again, and he's happy. And he finds Kaa, and he tries to get tries to like persuade Kaa to like just get Shanti to go back to the village because then she'll be safe and I can be here. And and then of course I don't remember. Louis, King Louis's not in it. Um, there were reasons for that Louis wasn't in it, mostly legal reasons with like his Louis Prima's estate. That didn't, it's like, we dealt with that in the past. We're not going to deal with that again. And various things happen. And as I said, it's been a long time since I've really, he interacts with everybody again. We get to see everybody basically except for King Louis again and like his monkeys and everything. There's like, oh, they left and everything. We get a few new characters. And of course, Shere Khan shows up and Mowgli has to fight Shere Khan and everything. And, you know, I don't remember exactly what happens, but he fights Shere Khan again. I'm pretty sure it's either, I don't think that Shere Khan dies. Um, I think it's just more that they scare Shere Khan off again or whatever. And, they, and then, Shanti and Ranjan are, they secretly return to the jungle every now and then and like spend time with Mowgli. And well, Mowgli comes back to the village, of course, but then they sneak off to the jungle every now and then and spend time with like Baloo and Bagheera and the wolves and everything. And of course, because the people who had, of course, originally voiced the characters in the original movie had unfortunately either all passed in the case of a lot of the adults, or in the case of Bruce Weatherman was too old to be able to voice Mowgli again. We have John Goodman as Baloo, Haley Joe Osment as Mowgli. Mae Whitman plays Shanti. She's just a different, voice character actor, voice character actor. Tony Jay voices Shere Khan. I think, if I remember correctly, I think he voiced Frodo, or not Frollo. Not Frodo. He didn't voice Frodo. He voiced Frollo, I think, in Hunchback of Notre Dame or Scar. I don't remember which, but I think he voiced in one or two. Bob Joels as Bagheera. I don't know who that is off the top of my head. Jim Cummings did like Kaa and Colonel Hathi and Hathi Jr. Bunch of the different, people did the different, did the vultures and everything. Not too much with that. And then we get into the other live action. Then we get into the live action stuff. There's one other animated thing that I'll get to after I finish the live action stuff. So, Rudyard Kipling's The Jungle Book, which is just what the title of the movie is called, came out in 1994. It was another Disney one. It's kind of a bit more of an adult version of Mowgli. Cary Elwes is in it, and I think he plays like this colonial type trapper hunter type thing. And I think Mowgli has to end up fighting against him. I haven't seen it. I think it's on Disney Plus. I may watch it at some point. And then they had The Jungle Book, Mowgli's Story, 1998. Again, more of the kid Mowgli concept. And then, of course, we get the 2016 version, which was done by Jon Favreau, who I think did a very good job with it. One thing that I've noticed when it comes to live action versions of Jungle Book is if you don't have a kid with a good enough imagination playing Mowgli in the live action stuff, even if you have like the different animals there for like him to interact with, if he can't do the right interactions with them and like the Mowgli, Legend of the Jungle, or whatever it was that I watched on Netflix, the kid that they had play Mowgli in that did a great job. And the kid that they have played Mowgli in this, in the 2016 version of Jungle Book, did a great job as well. And that's I think that they did a great job with that. The animation in the movie is beautiful. The way that they design the jungle and everything is great. They change a few things around. They make Baloo a little bit more lazy, in my opinion. They make Mowgli smarter, um, which kind of begs the question of, because like Mowgli likes to use different inventions and tools and stuff, because like he makes like a little thing to collect water and everything. And so it's just like, okay, so that's just something that he naturally has because he's a human, so he can figure out how to use tools, because it's not like he's been shown how to use tools. So, but yeah, the whole thing, Mowgli has to go back, and, we have Shere Khan, who's a little bit more threatening in this one, in my opinion. What ends up happening, Mowgli has been interacting with Baloo and Bagheera and Shere Khan and the wolves. Part of the story isn't all that different. The elephants are a little bit of a different. They're more like the wise guardians of the forest, as opposed to the whole, oh, Colonel marching around and everything. The elephants seem to be a bit more on the wise side, and the animals, the interactions seem to be a bit better. And then we end up, Baloo is a sloth bear, is what he's referred to as, and I think that's probably what he's based on in the original. It's bigger bear, not quite the same type of structure of what we have in North America, where there's the black bear and the brown bear and the grizzly bear and such, but a different type of body structure, because of course it evolved differently. And then of course we have a whole bunch of that. The different animals interact with each other, and then we get the introduction of King Louis, who is played by, if I remember correctly, he was played by Christopher Walken, and I'll go over the cast list when I get the end of the summary of the movie. And he is not an orangutan. He is a Gigantopithecus, which is like a giant freaking orangutan on steroids. Freaking giant thing with in the temple and everything that they still have him in, and they still defeat him and everything. And they worked, the Gigantopithecus into the song that they wrote for him. That's about like the one song that's in the movie. I'm like, Ka still kind of has a bit of a thing in that they changed Ka to female in this because they had wanted to give very good voice actors to the different characters. And like, Shere Khan is clearly defined as being male. Bagheera, same thing. Although in different cases, Bagheera and Shere Khan, or probably not Shere Khan, but I think in different cases of acting, Shere Khan or Bagheera may have been played by a female, but Ka the snake is usually. In this one they made it voiced by Scarlett Johansson instead. So I was like, how many different Marvel people can we put into this movie? Disney, Marvel, all over the place. It was like, well, we got them on staff. Okay, we'll do that. Are we gonna have them pop up in Infinity War or in an Endgame? No. Darn, I wanted to watch Baloo have to fight Thanos. I don't think that would have gone well. No, it probably wouldn't have, but Shere Khan versus Thanos might have been rather interesting. Although, admittedly, Shere Khan might have been on the side of Thanos, but I'm not sure. Moving on. But we get a whole bunch of different, we get different interactions with that. A little bit different. Shere Khan is a bit more threatening in this one, I will say, than he was in the original. Still very suave and everything for the way they have him play, but he's a bit more conniving as well, because he goes and kills Akela, who was the leader of the pack that Mowgli was part of, to try to get Mowgli to come back. The concept is they still want to get Mowgli to the man village, but it doesn't end up working too much. He steals a torch of fire from the man village and goes and uses it to try to fight Shere Khan. I think Shere Khan does end up dying via the battle that he has with Mowgli, but the jungle kind of ends up getting set on fire a bit, and then the elephants come along and they put out the fire with their wisdom of using the river. And then we get a whole, they defeat Shere Khan, Mowgli's safe, and he gets to stay with the wolf pack and everything, because different variations of the Jungle Book have interpreted the ending of it differently. Sometimes it's Mowgli goes to the man village and stays there. Sometimes he can go back and forth between the man village and the jungle. In this case, he stays in the jungle, doesn't really interact with the man village that much. And he has his wolf family and Baloo and Bagheera. As I said, they got a great kid to play Mowgli. I think it was it's either Neil or Nell Sathi, and I apologize to anyone who has certain names. I'm not the best when it comes to pronouncing names if I haven't heard the name too many times. So we have Bill Murray as Blue, Ben Kingsley as Bagheera, Idris Elba as Shere Khan, Lupita Nyong'o as Raksha. Raksha, who is Lupita Nyong'o is of course from Black Panther. I believe she plays Nakia. She played Mowgli's kind of adopted mother, the wolf mother. Scarlett Johansson is Kaa. Um, Not too much over Christopher Walken as King Louis. Gary Shandling as Iki, the porcupine. He's a little tiny porcupine that just has a tiny little role in it. It was his final role that he got to be in, unfortunately, before he died. Um, Not too much more with that. There's a few other, like John Favreau, who's the voicer, makes, or who's the director of it, makes, has an appearance in it as like Fred the piggy hog, pygmy hog. Sam Raimi's is just like a giant squirrel, and then yes, a couple of others, not too much. Um, and then we get into the other animated stuff that Jungle Book has been in. There's not too much. I mean, like they pop up in House of Mouse. We have some different interactions, like Kaa and um, Kaa and Shere Khan in the House of Mouse, Mowgli and Baloo. Some of the different Jungle Book characters sitting together. I mean, there's not too much. I mean, they don't have too much of thing that they do in the show. I mean, they're just kind of more there as cameos or sight gags, as well as most of what the other Disney casts are for when they pop up in the episodes. There's not like, as far as I can remember, there wasn't like an episode based around them. Like there was like with Snow White, it was like, oh, Pete has apples, blah 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 blah. And then there was a show on Disney Channel, whatever, that came out in 1990 that was called Tailspin, which is Tailspin is a animated series that they had, kind of like the whole, they had the Chip and Dale and the Rescue Rangers, everything as well. And they had like a bunch of different animated TV series. So like an animated Aladdin series and an animated Little Mermaid series and a Hercules series. But there was Tailspin, and Tailspin was based around different characters that were based on Jungle Book. Because we have Baloo, who is a seaplane pilot, who has a flying, who has like a skywriting company and like a delivery type company, and he I don't remember who voiced him, but like he's there, and he's like this fun loving pilot whose business is kind of going under, so it gets bought by this lady by Rebecca Cunningham, and and the company name is called Hire. No, it's Hire for Hire. So it's like the hire isn't like you go higher, like you go higher into the air, and then like hire like you hire someone. Hire for Hire. And we get and then we have like, there's not any humans in this. They're all like the anthropomorphic animals type stuff. And we get there's a younger bear or orphan boy who is like kidnapped by air pirates and stuff, because that's a thing in this show, called Kit Cloud Kicker, who's he kind of like is the Mowgli type character that Baloo takes in. Kit calls him Papa Bear a lot. And they live in a place called what's it called? It's called a Cape Suzette. Kind of a crepes. It's a joke. I'm like crepe Suzette or something like that. And there's a connection here because if you watch the DuckTales, the current one that's on, with like David Tennant and all that fun stuff that they have going on right now. At one point, they reference a place called Cape Suzette. And it's just like a reference back to Tailspin, because it's like in an anthropomorphic world. I would be fine if they had like the characters from Tailspin have to pop up in, DuckTales, but I don't think that's going to happen, considering that series is like 30 years old at this point in time, and there's like 2 episodes that are banned for various reasons for what happens in the show. And if you want to know what that is, go watch it, or go read about it. There's like, the series kind of has like Raiders of the Lost Ark feel, some stuff where they bring up different references to like different comedies and stuff like that. So it's like, fun stuff that happens, and there's like sky pirates, and there's like another area that they have to deal with, and it's just fun that what they do with that. I mean, there's not too much else besides that for Jungle Book. I mean, you have the live action ones that they've done, you have the animated movie, and the Tailspin, and not too much. I mean, like, there's not too much that happens in Tailspin that like references back to, like, you could watch Tailspin and not have ever watched Jungle Book. There's like a Louis bar or whatever, where it's like there's an orangutan named Louis that owns a bar. Like, him and Baloo are friends, and I think Shere Khan like has like a counterpart in it, and I don't remember if Bagheera does or not, but I think Shere Khan does. But like they deal with a lot of different, you know, like sky pirates for the most part of the main thing that they have to deal with and such. And I just like normal people getting thrown in with having to deal with sky pirates. Okay, yeah, sure, I'll buy that. Um, so the next movie that I would be reviewing would be, and I'm very sure about it this time, should be Aristocats. I'll be watching that a little bit later this week. Let's see, I'm recording this on a Friday, so it'll be like Saturday or Sunday when I watch it. And then, I gotta go edit this one, which it's about an hour. I might get down to about an hour-ish or so, or just after that, just over an hour. We'll see, or just under. I got a few snips I can cut out. But shouldn't be too much. Yeah, we'll do Aristocats next, which should be a shorter one since there's not as much to go into with Aristocats. And then we'll have Robin Hood. Not as much again. I mean, it's a basic movie, and then but we have like Once Upon a Time stuff. Once Upon a Time stuff with Jungle Book. There's not really too much of a reference to Once Upon a Time to Jungle Book in Once Upon a Time, except that the huntsman character, who is Sheriff Graham in Storybrooke, in Once Upon a Time, he's raised by wolves, which is basically just like the closest that they get to like a reference to Mowgli. Because like Baloo, Bagheera, Shere Khan, none of that ever pops up in there. They don't have like humanized versions of them running around Storybrooke like they do with like, some of the other characters, like the Lady and the Tramp characters or whatever. There's not really too much of that. I think that's about it. My dog, I'm pretty sure, wants to be able to put his head out the window again. Yeah, that doesn't work so well when I'm recording for having the window open because wind and cold, and we are having like a spree right now where it's like barely getting even into the double digits right now for as cold as it is right here. So yep. Next up will be Aristocats when I get to that. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye. The dog sneezed. Bye. You gonna sneeze again? Or not? Okay, fine. No. Okay, we're good. Bye.
You may kill for yourselves, and your mates, and your cubs as they need, and you can, but kill not for pleasure of killing, and 7 times never kill man.